She was just driving home when the flashing red and blue lights appeared behind her. No warning, no reason, just a stop that would change everything. Angela Hayes adjusted the rearview mirror of her silver sedan, the hum of the highway fading as she turned onto a quieter road in suburban Dallas. The evening air felt thick, and her sequined gown shimmered faintly under the dim streetlights. She'd just left a fundraising event, supporting a local community center she cared deeply about. Angela was proud of the work they were doing, but more than anything, she was looking forward to getting home to her family. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was her husband, Malcolm Hayes, the newly appointed police commissioner of Dallas County. Angela smiled softly, murmuring to herself, "Be home soon," not bothering to pick up the call. Then came the flash of red and blue. Angela's brows furrowed as she slowed down, pulling to the side of the road. She tried to think of a reason for the stop. She wasn't speeding, hadn't run any stop signs, wasn't even using her phone. Maybe it's just a routine stop, she thought, rolling down the window as the officer approached. The officer was tall, his face hard, with eyes that didn't seem to soften. "License and registration," he said. Angela handed over her documents without hesitation. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I'm being stopped?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He glanced at her license, then back at her. "We got a call about a vehicle matching this description involved in suspicious activity in the area." Suspicious activity. Her heart skipped. "Suspicious activity?" she repeated, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "Step out of the car, ma'am," he ordered, his voice growing firm. Angela hesitated, unsure of what to do. "Excuse me? I'm not sure I understand." "Step out of the car. Now," he interrupted, taking a step closer. Another cruiser pulled up behind the first, two more officers getting out. Their flashlights cut through the night, their shadows towering over her. Angela's hands shook as she unbuckled her seatbelt, slowly opening the door. She kept her hands visible, just as Malcolm had always taught her. "I'm complying," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But I'd like to know why I'm being treated like this." The officers didn't answer. One started rummaging through the back seat and the trunk, moving like he expected to find something. Angela's heart pounded as one officer dug through her neatly organized trunk. Her car, which had been filled with boxes of brochures and event materials, was now being treated like a crime scene. He tossed things around, inspecting everything as though expecting to find something hidden. One officer pulled out a stack of pamphlets and held them up. "What's all this?" Angela kept her voice steady. "I just left a fundraiser. Those are brochures for a community center we're supporting." He stared at her for a moment before throwing the stack back into the trunk. Another officer approached, his eyes narrow. "Ma'am, are there any weapons, drugs, or anything illegal in this vehicle?" "No, officer," Angela said, her patience starting to thin. "I told you, I've done nothing wrong. I'd appreciate it if you could explain why I'm being treated this way." The officer scoffed. "We're just doing our job." He slammed the trunk shut with a force that made Angela flinch. Her phone buzzed again. Malcolm. "May I retrieve my phone to call my husband now?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. The officers exchanged quick glances before one nodded, almost reluctantly. No sudden movements. Angela fought the urge to roll her eyes. She carefully reached into the car, taking the phone. Her fingers trembled, but she steadied herself. The officers seemed disappointed when nothing about her behavior justified their suspicion. "We're running your plates and license," one officer said, stepping back. Angela crossed her arms, standing tall as the second cruiser's spotlight bathed her car in harsh light. Her composure held, but inside she was furious. They had no reason for any of this. She dialed Malcolm's number. He picked up immediately. "Angela, are you okay? I've been calling." His voice filled with concern. "I'm pulled over by the police," and she said, cutting him off. "They're searching my car without cause. I need you here now." Malcolm's voice changed instantly. "Where are you?" "I'm on my way." Angela gave him her location, her voice shaking slightly as the reality of the situation hit her. Malcolm Hayes wasn't easily rattled. He'd spent years navigating the intricacies of public service, most recently as the police commissioner of Dallas County. Control was second nature to him, even in the most heated moments. But tonight, seeing Angela standing on the side of the road, surrounded by officers, Something inside him snapped. The door of his sleek black SUV slammed shut as he stepped out. His tall frame commanded attention, and as he walked toward the officers, the tension in the air thickened. "Good evening," Malcolm said, his voice steady but filled with authority. "I'm Malcolm Hayes, Dallas County Police Commissioner. Can someone explain to me why my wife is being detained and her vehicle searched without cause?" The older officer straightened, but his eyes never met Malcolm's. "Sir, we're conducting an investigation. We received a report of suspicious activity involving a car matching this description." Malcolm's jaw tightened. Suspicious activity? In a sedan driven by a well-dressed woman, leaving a charity event? "Do you know who this is?" The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his partner. The older officer cleared his throat. "We weren't aware of her identity, sir. We were just following protocol." "Protocol?" Malcolm repeated, his voice rising slightly. "Since when does protocol involve searching someone's car without consent or probable cause?" The officers fell silent. "That's what I thought," Malcolm said, stepping closer. His presence loomed, and the tension was palpable. Bystanders were gathering, recording the scene. The flashing lights cast an eerie glow on everything. Angela finally spoke, her voice steady. "Malcolm, they wouldn't even let me make a phone call at first. From the moment they pulled me over, I've been treated like a suspect." Malcolm turned to her, his expression softening for a moment before hardening again as he turned to face the officers. "Do you understand the kind of liability you're exposing this department to?" he asked. "You've harassed an innocent woman, my wife, without any reason. This isn't just unprofessional, it's unacceptable." One of the officers stammered. "We were just doing our job, sir." Malcolm cut him off sharply. "Your actions suggest otherwise, and those cameras," he gestured to the growing number of phones recording, "will make sure there's no spinning this. You're going to explain yourselves, right here, right now." The officers exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to respond. The older officer took a step forward, trying to regain control. "Commissioner Hayes, maybe we can de-escalate this situation and discuss this back at the precinct." Malcolm let out a short laugh, his voice laced with disbelief. "De-escalate? After humiliating my wife? No, we're addressing this here, in public, exactly where you created this mess." The crowd around them grew larger. People murmured, their phones capturing everything. Angela stood quietly, her posture composed, though her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. The officers could feel the weight of the moment. The crowd had seen everything, and now there was no way to hide their mistakes. Malcolm didn't let up. "You're going to call your supervisor now," he ordered. The older officer hesitated before reaching for his radio, reluctantly complying. Every second felt like an eternity. Malcolm stood firm, his body language unyielding. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last. Angela stood silently, her heart pounding in her chest. The bystanders whispered among themselves, some of them live streaming the entire confrontation. Finally, a black and white SUV pulled up, and out stepped Lieutenant Charles Donovan. His crisp uniform couldn't hide the confusion in his eyes as he scanned the scene. "What's going on here?" Donovan demanded. He barely glanced at Angela before turning to Malcolm. "Lieutenant Donovan," Malcolm said, his voice even but sharp, "your officers here pulled over my wife, searched her vehicle without cause, and still haven't given a legitimate explanation. I'm waiting for an explanation." Donovan's eyes widened as the realization hit him. "Commissioner Hayes, I didn't realize—" "That's the problem, Lieutenant," Malcolm interrupted, his voice cold. "It shouldn't matter who she is. Every citizen deserves respect and fair treatment. This is unacceptable." Donovan's face tightened. "Is this true? Did you search her vehicle without cause?" The older officer hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "We had a report about suspicious activity." Malcolm cut him off again. "Cut the excuses. You had no cause. And now not only have you harassed an innocent woman, but you've also put this entire department under scrutiny. Do you even understand the gravity of what you've done?" Donovan rubbed his temples, clearly trying to regain control. "I'll handle this personally, Commissioner. I assure you, it will be investigated." Malcolm stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "This isn't just about an investigation. It's about accountability. You don't get to sweep this under the rug." The crowd murmured in agreement, their phones recording every word. Malcolm turned to them, addressing the bystanders directly. "To everyone here," he said, raising his voice, "this is the kind of behavior we've been fighting to eliminate in our police force. No one, no matter their status or skin color, should be treated like this. This is why accountability matters." A smattering of applause rippled through the crowd. The fallout was swift. The video went viral almost overnight. Hashtags like number justice for Angela and number accountability matters trended across social media. News outlets picked up the story, airing the footage alongside headlines questioning the integrity of the Dallas County Police Department. By morning, Angela and Malcolm sat at their dining table, the weight of the situation settling in. Angela sipped her coffee, tired from the night before, while Malcolm scrolled through his phone, reading articles and comments. "They're calling it the Hayes incident," Malcolm said, his tone heavy. "I knew it would get attention, but it's bigger than I expected." Angela set her cup down, meeting his gaze. "It's not about us, Malcolm. It's about what this represents. How many people go through this every day and don't have the platform we do? They deserve justice too." Malcolm nodded, his expression somber. "I've spent my whole career trying to root out this kind of behavior, and now it's clear there's so much more to do." Later that day, Malcolm held an emergency press conference. He stood at the podium, flanked by Angela and other department leaders. His voice was calm but firm as he addressed reporters and community members. "What happened last night was unacceptable," he said. "The actions of those officers were not just a violation of policy. They were a betrayal of the trust this community places in its police force. I want to be clear, this is not who we are. This is not who we will be." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "There will be a full investigation. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave, but this isn't just about punishment. It's about systemic change. We need to ask why incidents like this keep happening, and what we can do about it." The crowd applauded, but Malcolm's face remained serious. He turned to Angela, who stepped forward to speak. "When I was pulled over," Angela began, "I felt powerless. I did everything right, but it didn't matter. I wasn't seen as a person. I was seen as a problem, and I know I'm not alone." She took a deep breath. "But I know change is possible. It starts with accountability, with leaders willing to challenge the system. We have to do better for everyone." In the days that followed, the department rolled out new training on de-escalation and implicit bias. A citizens advisory board was created to ensure accountability. Malcolm reached out to community leaders, promising to rebuild trust. The officers involved faced disciplinary action. One chose to resign. Their actions were a reminder of how deep the issues ran, but also how necessary it was to confront them. As for Angela, she became an advocate for justice, using her platform to amplify voices that weren't being heard. She didn't tell her story out of anger, but out of hope. "It's not just about what happened to me," she would say. "It's about making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." The Hayes family turned a moment of injustice into a chance for change. It wasn't easy. The road ahead was long, but together they faced it with courage, conviction, and the belief that a better world was possible. That's the lesson we all need to remember. Real change starts with accountability and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. So ask yourself, what can you do to make a difference? Start today. Speak up. Push for change. Because every voice matters.